Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Sally with Good Body, Good Brain podcast. Today, we have somebody who really understands the concept of good brain, good body, because Sue Humphrey, who's a 3 times Olympic coach, not to mention coaching a lot of people from high school on up, she's going to talk to us about how mental preparation affects long-term performance and all the sort of things that have happened. She's going to have some really, really fun tips for us, as well as just being in that particular arena for so long. And I am so glad that you're here today.
Well, thanks. I'm excited to be here and chat.
Yes. So, and when you picked this topic, I thought, wow, what a great topic to be thinking about and we've talked about those studies in the past of like just thinking about doing that basketball and putting it into the hoop, because basketball is my game. Just thinking about it and the studies between actually doing it and thinking about it and how they're so close aligned. But now our mental preparation has gone to like an art form, and you're the forerunner of it. You are what I call the leading edge of all the stuff that's happening now. So
Well,
tell us
thank
a little
you.
bit more about that.
It's, we, as fans, we watch and we see everything on TV or in person and all the great physical acts and ooh and ah, but we don't realize the amount of mental preparation and training that went on behind the scenes that took place in practice, many years of practice, or just that final pep talk with you and the coach or you and yourself. And nowadays, the mental preparation and training is talked about so much more. And it's not like it suddenly happened. It's been going on. It's just we didn't talk about it. Mental health was not a topic that we were comfortable in sharing as a society. But now it is. And thank heavens that it is, because now we can talk about the total preparation of an athlete or of a performer, not just the physical aspect.
Absolutely. And I would venture to say that the mental aspect of performance is probably, I'd give it about a 60 or 70%. You have to have
80,
gift.
80 to 85.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but I didn't want to like overstep because that's not my game. But you can have like all the great, quick acting tendons, you can have the great gifts within, but if you don't believe, you don't win.
That's very true. I mean, they sometimes the athletes will, depending on their personality and so forth, as to sharing that, well, I did this all myself and, it's all me. But deep down, and they know that they did have to think through it some. And then, it's very rare that you just go out and perform at a gold medal performance. And gold medal doesn't always mean an Olympic athlete. It could be somebody trying out for the school play and getting the lead role. It could be a musician trying out for the orchestra. It's performers at all level. And that's what I think is real important too, is that, I come on with the Olympic credential, which is part of my past and present, but it's performance. I mean, whether you're on the athletic field or in the classroom or on the stage.
Yes, and it permeates everything from people, like I watch those little guys on the spelling bees.
Right.
You have to have a clear mind. You have to figure out a way to put aside all that anxiety that clouds your mind so that you can come up with the right answer at the right time.
Very much
and that's
so.
Mental preparation. Yes.
Exactly. Just mental rehearsal, playing it over and over in your mind, and even with visualizing ahead of time what it's going to be like and what it's going to potentially feel like or look like, depending on how deep you go into it. You can create it in your mind, and research has shown that sometimes the brain doesn't always know reality versus fiction. And so you can kind of convince yourself and convince the brain that this is really happening. And so you're setting your mind up for when it actually does occur in real time, the brain knows how to react. And so that's what we've been working with our athletes on.
Yes, and you hit on a subject that's dear to my heart, neuroscience, because I'm basically geeky. I just want to know all the research and the data, and the more data I can get a hands on, like the better I am. And so I have different kinds of clients. I have clients that are business clients and clients that are having trouble talking to their spouse about some issue. It can be any number of things. But when we do rehearsals, they go, "Oh, okay. I didn't think about it in that kind of way." And that little shift, like it's not so much the person, it's a personality. That little shift can allow you to be more accepting of both yourself, because if you don't have it for yourself, it's really hard to have it for the other person.
Oh, yes, yes. I mean, yeah, because you've got to have that internal, acceptance, like you say, of yourself, of the situation, your part in it, and what part you play. And sometimes that's very hard for a young performer to accept or to put into the play. But that's where the repetition and the practice come in. Again, physical and mental, it's not equal necessarily, but like we're saying, 80-85% is what the research is showing us. And yet I dare say that many of us, myself included, always used 80% of our time with an athlete training mental performance. So it's an area that's, very neglected and can definitely be utilized better.
Yes. And when I'm using a performance model in, like, say, the business, it's so interesting, particularly with women. And that's why, like, you're a pioneer, you're a trailblazer because of your gender.
Right.
I mean, we hate to think, oh, heck, because I thought, back in the day when all the feminist things were happening, I was in business, and I sort of I just said, okay, I can make as much money as I want to just using my brain and my voice. And I didn't really think so much about other people who are being kind of shut down by it being in a field that was so masculine. But I'm sure there's been times when you actually had to prove yourself, even though you got the full cred.
Definitely. I mean, when I first started, I was not only the only female in the room, I was young, meaning in my early to mid 20s. And of course, doing that as a female back in the 70s, you can imagine the good old boy network, looking at me to get coffee and that, take notes, be the secretary. But I lost a job because I had not coached men before, and the position was a head women's coach and assistant men's coach, so it was combined. I was told by the athletic director, because I had not coached men before, even though I was the regional coach of the year for the women, that I wasn't getting the job because I didn't have experience with the men coaching. And yet the person he hired, the male he hired, had never coached women, and it was a head women's job. And I'm like,
I knew you were going to say that.
So when one of my athletes won the gold medal, who was a male, I really wanted to call that athletic director and say, gee, I guess I can coach men, but I didn't.
Well, he got the message through the media anyway.
I hope he read those papers.
Yes, soon as well.
Right.
Because the brain is the brain.
I'm sorry?
I said the brain is the brain, regardless of where it lives.
Exactly. Right. No, I mean, I think, that's been the one thing initially I did have to prove myself, being a female coach and being in the collegiate system. So you're dealing with, young men, 19, 20, 21 years old. And like I say, this is back in the 70s and 80s, where women in coaching was not necessary, especially on a men's team or in a men's world, if you will. And so I did have to prove myself. And as the athletes I was working with started doing well and better, more men then started coming toward me and asking for help. And it was kind of a neat thing, but it was a backhanded compliment. But then it was kind of a, why did I have to prove myself to you, where the guy next to me gets the credibility just because he's a male and has not had the coaching success that I have had at all. So it's been frustrating.
Oh, yes. And I, when we had our Olympics and our Paralympics, I was glued to the set. I don't usually watch television, but I would set my timer night when they would come on, and I would watch them all through the night and, take little naps the next day. And I was so invigorated and I was so inspired by just what they could do, but also the drama, the humanity drama that went along with their performance, especially couples that trained together. And couples, maybe one was in the Paralympics and one was in the regular Olympics, and they had a whole nother set of challenges to be dealing with. And so you see the evolution of training and how athletes have just, because it works.
Right. And that the couple you're talking about, or one of the couples, at least in track, it is a very dynamic issue, because what if she wins gold and he doesn't? Even though he's supportive ahead of time, after the fact, is he still supportive? And of course, we'll never know because they both won gold. But, it takes a strong, and not as much nowadays as it used to be, but when you would have a strong female athlete who was performing well, her partner had to be strong in his self-worth and dynamics, that he wasn't offended or upset by her performance. And when that was a real hard transition for a lot of our top female athletes back when, let's say, the late 80s, 90s realm, is that they were very strong female athletes, but they didn't have a date to the prom because the men were intimidated or jealous,
The notoriety
that was very hard. Very hard, because I'd have, young ladies crying, what's wrong with me? Why won't somebody pay attention? Why, it's like the beauty queen that sits home because everybody thinks she's got a date, but she doesn't. And so, it carried over. I've seen it not so much anymore, but back when, like I say, 80s and 90s, it was a big thing. Especially with our better female athletes.
Well, you and I are of the age that we can remember back when.
Right.
And so when I remember back when like, oh gosh, I can't even pinpoint the date, but I loved sports growing up, and it gave me a lot of my self-confidence because I was good at it. I was good at running. I used to practice running every single day. I'd practice running with my horses. We'd run alongside each other up and down the pasture. And then as I got older, I went more into tennis and also to basketball, because my dad had played those sports in college, and it just was a natural thing, being the firstborn boy.
Right.
I didn't know I was a girl until I was about 13. I grew up as a boy, dad's first, and he thought only, because he'd gone off to the war, right, and came back, and here I was. So yes, all those things that we had to do grow up, and sports really, I think, uplifted women in terms of their own self-worth, their own abilities to overcome a lot of messages that we had gotten in society, like, oh no, you can't do that, you're just a girl.
Right. Or again, the body image issue, with our throwers. Back in the day,
Mm-hmm.
it was like, well, if you're going to be a thrower, you've got to be big and bulky and, very muscular. And
Mm-hmm.
now you look at the throwers, and sure, there's some that are still in that body position, but some of our
Mm-hmm.
Olympic athletes, our champions, you wouldn't know that they were an athlete at all. They're tall, they're slim, but they're powerful
Mm-hmm.
as heck, toward whatever event they're in. And so
Yeah.
that whole body shaming situation, that's talented, or it's neutralized out because the women are starting
Mm-hmm.
to say something about it, and big is beautiful and it's okay. And now sometimes they overdo it with all this makeup and the false eyelashes and all of that. I haven't bought into all of that
And
yet, but
the thingies on their nails, right? Right?
right,
Like
right.
those things.
I grew up on the same team with FloJo, Florence Griffith Joyner.
Oh yes, Lord Jorser.
And
Yes, yes.
so she and Gail Devers, we were all on the same group. And so
Mm-hmm.
the long nails I kind of got used to pretty early. The
Mm-hmm.
eyelashes are what gets me, because sometimes I don't know how they see out of them because they're so long, but it's what, the modern trend. And so they think it looks good, and that's what society is accepting now. And, they want to
Mm-hmm.
look like young women, and rightly so, so I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like we joke about, you clean up well, about, that on the track and off the track, they're very attractive athletes. And because
Oh
they're,
yes, and then that makes money for them, because then they got commercials and they've got the skincare products
right,
and et cetera,
right.
et cetera. Yeah.
Yes.
And when I was going back in my little adventure back in the day, when I think about what it took for somebody like Wilma Rudolph to get where she got and to be the champion that she was, what a tough, resilient person she had to become that athlete.
Very much so. I think the other thing that Coach Ed Temple, who was the coach of that team, the Tiger Bells
Mm-hmm.
from Tennessee
Mm-hmm.
State, he was like a father to those girls, or young ladies. They were in college, and he, was back in the 60s. And so that it was very, very strict. And of course, with the civil rights and everything else, that was a whole different world of things. But yeah, I mean, Wilma Rudolph had polio. She had a child out of wedlock. You look back in her history, and
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing saying Olympic champion there at all. But she had the foundation, the support within
Mm-hmm.
her family and the college team to maximize it, and she sure did.
Yes, and gosh, she could run like the wind.
Yes, yes,
I can
yeah.
remember probably like the very first time she actually really won a very big meet.
Oh, okay.
And yes, I can remember actually seeing it on television, black and white TV then.
Right,
I
of
can see
course.
it, and the announcer, who was a guy, of course, because women didn't do anything like that then.
No.
The announcer kept saying, "Oh my gosh, look!" It's like he was like astounded. Oh my gosh, look! She's pulling ahead. She's going to win. She's going to win by so many links. Like, I can't even remember what they called it, like body links or whatever back then. Oh, look. And it was just, they were dumbfounded that she could fly like the wind.
Right. I mean, and right, she was very tall and thin and had a beautiful stride. And, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. You put her up against athletes even today, form-wise, and
Mm-hmm.
it's beautiful. I think her nickname was a gazelle or something that, She just looked like she floated along, but she beat you to the finish.
Yes, and I'm also fascinated by the female swimmers, because they're training with the guys and they're training with guy coaches and they're beating guys.
Yes. Yeah.
Although I'm not going to venture into that girl boy thing, the girls that think they're boys and boys that think that girls, etc., because that's a whole nother topic.
Right.
But
Definitely.
I think about Ledecky and how she's like, I hate to say machine, but she is. And when she talks about what she's thinking about, she's just thinking about the next stroke.
I mean,
And
swimmers is, wow. The mentality of being in the water, looking down at this black line. At least in track, you're out, you have some different scenery.
Visual, yeah.
Yes, but swimming, to me, that's a whole different mindset because of the tediousness of it.
Yes, and the tediousness of the training, which is every day. Every day.
Twice.
And they like it.
Well, they say they do. We'll see later. I mean, they accept it. I mean, that's it. Like with gymnastics too, is, it's sometimes a 6-7 hour day. And it's like, well, how are you balanced and how are you getting the academics in if that's your age group? And, I mean, that's a rough life. Swimming and gymnastics, I mean, track is hard, but it's not as it doesn't take up your whole life, your whole day, the way now it can as you get older. But I mean, the college scene and things like that, time management is very important, but at least you have a little more well-rounded background, I think, than some of the other sports. But again, it's whatever you like and whatever your talent leads you to.
I want you to think about, think of a time when you met someone who was a pretty good athlete and they thought they were a pretty good athlete, and you started working with them, and then they were surprised about how good they actually became because of this.
Well, I think the athlete that I remember usually that was so tough mentally was when he started out. It was a male, and he started out and he was already, talented and winning conference and a national title and so forth. But the atmosphere that we created, he post-collegiate, so he graduated out of the college system, and the mindset that he came with, or the mental expectation that he put on himself and then I picked up and kept going with it, we just assumed and accepted, you are going to be an Olympic champion. You are going to be a record holder. And these are the steps that it's going to take to do it. And were there setbacks? Sure. I mean, we went through injuries, we went through surgeries, we went through winning, we went through losing. But when it came down to the crunch time, he was on the podium at the top. And so, but mentally, he was the toughest mental athlete, performer-wise, that I think I've ever worked with, because he could be going through all this drama in personal life or with his health. And yet when it came clutch time, he's like, don't worry about it. He's very low key and very, don't worry, we're going to have fun. Or, or we place bets on different things at practice for Gatorades or, some little trinket of some sort. It's like, I'll do this and then you owe me a Gatorade. And I'm like, okay. And sometimes I won and sometimes he won with it. So creating scenarios in practice was real important, or is real important, because again, that helps you set up the whole mental preparation. In other words, I work mainly with field event athletes, so they could be out there 2 and 3 hours. It's not like 100 where you're there 10 seconds and that's it. So you have time to think, which is good and bad, because you're out there and you can either create and build yourself up, or you can create and build yourself down as the hours accumulate. So that was the thing that was so good with him, is that he was able to create and to simulate a performance in practice and then go out and duplicate it in a meet. Sometimes you have athletes that are really good in practice, but they don't perform well in meet. Other times, or other people, they're good in meets and they don't practice well. So you just have to learn your athlete, or the performer, whatever field is in, because, we're all individuals, we're all humans, and that brings a whole nother dynamic to it, is that you have to treat, as a coach, I have to treat each of these individuals as such and learn them and get the trust and the confidence with them and them with me as to what works for you. What things can I say that motivate you? What things do I say that upset you? And, sometimes maybe you need the tough love kick in the rear type of a comment, and sometimes you don't, that'll be something to send them over the deep end. So, it's a very, coaching is not just X's and O's and, right. one thing fits all. You definitely, to be successful, or to have the athletes that you work with be successful, you need to be sure you're individualizing and knowing. And again, this mental preparation is so individualized because every individual brings different background to the table. They might have supportive parents, they might have overbearing parents.
I was going to bring that up. Yes. And what about the families? Make or break?
Exactly. I mean, families, again, and ultimately, I know that they love their kid and they want what's best for them. However, there are times when, as much as you try to nicely say back off, or sometimes not so nicely say back off, give the kid some space. Some parents are just, they don't realize, or maybe they do, I don't know, how detrimental they're being to the athlete. And, and they're kind of reliving their either successful athletic
glory
career,
days or not glory days, right?
Or not glory days. Yeah. And that's what's really challenging, especially I work with high school kids now. And so the parents are there, definitely, in college, they might be away, thousands of miles away, but now with phone and FaceTime and everything else, they're only a button away, So you have to really learn on this. And some of these parents, like I say, they just don't realize that they're the limiting factor sometimes. And
they're making the stress and anxiety levels go up, which interferes with all the other processes that you're trying to put in place.
Exactly. And, that's where and this is more like with the Olympic or the higher level performer who is usually older. And you'd think as a young adult, in their 20s or early 30s, they could tell their parents back off, or their spouse, hey, this is my job, I'm at work. But the amount of energy that some of our athletes spend to get the family arrangements, to get the family tickets, to get the family, we came all this way to see you, honey. Why are you not spending time with us? And I'm like, well, because they compete the next day. I don't want them up walking around seeing the sights. And so to get families to understand this is a whole nother lesson to be learned. And I've seen athletes that have lost gold medals. That's what they've said. If I had not had to spend so much time with my family before the competition, I think I could have won. And this was coming from a silver medalist. So it wasn't like he did bad. He just was tired from walking around with the family. And yet they
those late night dinners.
Yes. Yeah. So, the families of elite level performers need to realize their role is not to be at the front. Their role is to be the supporter in the back. And then after the competition, then enjoy it and have fun and, go out on the tours. But before the competition or during the competition, back off.
Yes, and if you look at the people who were really successful this go round in the Olympics, yes, they had supportive parents. Yes, maybe they had some medical issues when they were growing up, and the parent is like on pins and needles that something's going to happen when they're performing, etc. But they also struck the happy medium of like, I'm going to support you all that I can, but I'm not going to get in your way. I'm going to just let you do what you do, because that's what you do, and see just sit here and enjoy your ability to either get that gold medal, that silver medal. I don't think there's anything wrong with having a bronze medal. Heck, if you're a bronze medal winner at the Olympics, hey, you're still on the pedestal.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Even if you went out and performed well, but it wasn't enough to medal, that, in 2004, I was the head Olympic coach for women. And so you're there the whole time, and then you ride the bus back late. And I get back on the bus, and one of our athletes was there, and she was crying. And I was like, why are you crying? You just finished fourth in the Olympic Games.
In the
world. And she was crying because she felt she'd let everybody down being fourth. And so my whole ride back to the Olympic Village was counseling her about that fourth isn't bad, because she jumped well. She had good performance, good result. It just wasn't on that day at that time. And then the sad thing later on is one of those athletes tested positive, and she could have or should have moved up. So that's what's unfortunate, is that, we get the whole drug issue involved, and that's another story with that. But, to think that you finished fourth in the world and were a failure, that to me is a bit much. That's rough.
Yeah, that's a heartbreak on both sides, and just to be on that bus, holy cow, just to be riding on with all those other athletes, you've earned that. You've earned being on this bus,
right?
And be just like, take it all in. If the only thing you have to say at the end of the day is, did I do my best?
Right. When you look in the mirror, did you do the best that you could do, and do everything that you were in charge or control of? That's the other thing, is there's only so much we can control. And I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt or somebody who said, you can only control how you're going to react to situations. And so I think that's the biggest thing, is you can be as prepared as maximal performance, but you can't control other people. You can't control weather. You can't control just nature. It is what it is, type of thing. You control how you react. And always remember that, because I think that it fits so appropriately through life, whether it's athletics or not. Yeah.
Yes. And because you've coached high school folks, do you think that the high school folks you're coaching now are different than, say, like 10, 15 years ago?
Yes, I really do.
And how so?
I think it's a different, I get this a lot, or a lot of times people will say this, and then when you pin them down, it's like, well, what is different? I think the fact that they feel things should just happen for them. They being a hard worker, being rewarded for hard work, does not seem to be in their scope all the time. Sometimes I don't like the word entitlement, but it's kind of that I'm out here, so therefore I should be getting a reward. I think that's it, that our society, we give all these participation awards, participation trophies, that drives me crazy. because,
instead of meritocracy. Did you
they
win
go
this?
home. Yeah, they've got all these little trophies and medals. And I'm like, well, what did you win this for? Well, I sat on the bench the
I
whole
showed up.
time. Yeah,
I showed up.
exactly. And so to me, that's not what you should be rewarded for, because life is not going to reward you for that. And I think we're
True.
setting our youth up for a hard reality check when they get older, because there are no participation certificates in life. They're not the trophies. And so I think because the kids are so, and I think COVID had something to do with this too, is that they're in their own world more, isolated, even though they're around people, because at COVID, they were all on Zoom, or like we are now, we're little tiles to each other. And so, I think that and the fact that they are so involved with social media and technology, they don't get out and play, so a lot of things physically do not come as easy for the athletes of today, because they didn't grow up playing and learning how to jump and learning how to throw when they were little, or, in elementary school. And so you've got to teach them that now in high school. And now you're getting into the embarrassment factor, because they don't want to look bad in front of their friends. And they don't, and a lot of times we're out there as co-ed settings. So you either get the macho guy that's trying to show off for the girl, or the girl that's there trying to impress the guy, or the athletes that won't do anything because they don't want to look bad in front of their peers, whether it be male or female. So it is a whole different dynamic. I don't feel, I kind of joke sometimes with some of the older athletes that, the last really, really dedicated athletes were maybe in the late 80s, early 90s. And yet that offends the current athletes, because they're like, well, we work hard, we train. And I'm talking as a group, not individual. Not individuals, because I see, like a Gabby Thomas or somebody today, and, she works her tail off. So it's not that she doesn't work, or Allison Felix or Sydney McLaughlin. It's not that they're not training. But as a group, I think that the expectations for things to just be given to us are more so in society today than 10, 20 years ago. So
yes, we don't want to hurt their feelings.
Yes, God forbid that your feelings get hurt. Yes.
Well, the good thing is we're still breaking records.
True.
Which tells us either, I don't think we're creating a new human, but I think we are learning what the human needs to optimize performance.
Well, that and the shoes. I mean, in track, the shoes are different with this carbon plating and everything, and the tracks are being built to be different composition to give more of a rebound back to the performer. Now, I'm not sure in swimming what they're doing. I think there's water levels or something that make a difference. So that's technology is doing as much as the athlete changing, I think.
Yes, and you see that with like the high dive. All those guys that don't have any hair on them. They're got the smallest swimsuit possible to be modest, and they're cutting all the resistance down as much as they can.
Yes. Well, yeah, because some of the swimmers, they have to almost get painted on the suits. It's like could cut down the water resistant. Those are just skin tight, and they've even outlawed some suits because they were maybe too advanced. This was a few Olympics ago that there was some big controversy over the style of suit that you could wear. And I know in track, there's a list of shoes that you can use and list of shoes you can't use. And when you check in, the officials at the clerking area, they check your shoes. And they check the height of the heel or the height of the front. And, so technology has definitely taken over in many areas with sport, which is good.
Mhm.
It's here, so take advantage of it. But I think too, then that's creating some of these awesome performances that we never thought we would see, and yet now we're seeing them. So it just keeps pushing the gold medal or the world record further and further out, which is cool.
I think about javelin and also the super high jump
Hmm.
when you're pole jumping, because that pole has the carbon polymers that are in the center has changed through the
Hmm.
years, because we used to use a wooden one back in
You're
the
right.
day. Yeah, and so
And
now
then the sawdust.
yes, yes, and now we've changed that dynamic, and the athlete has that other advantage of knowing how to use that instrument, and it becomes an
Hmm.
instrument as opposed to just a technique to get over. Of course, technique
Oh
is a
yeah.
lot, but
And I mean, what Mondo Duplantis is doing in the pole vault is just so exciting because,
mhm,
and ironically, he is jumping now so high that the pole vault standards, the things that the side
mhm.
bars that the crossbars
Yes,
sit on,
yes,
they don't go high enough for him. So they're having to build new standards that go higher up for where when he's competing, they have to have these higher standards because his he's out jumped the standard, if you will.
yes. He's
And
out jumped the height of the pole
yeah, yeah,
that holds up the
holds up the crossbar. Yeah.
yes, yes, and that is so exciting because like to study him as an individual and to say, okay, is his body different? Does he have more high quick twitching muscles as opposed to long? What's his chemical makeup? Is there something about him as a physiological specimen that's created this, or is it that he has honed his technique, or is it the instrumentation that he's using? So there's like different pieces, and of course, this.
The mind, and I think it's a little of all of that. Again, sometimes the best predictor of athletic ability is who your parents are. And
Oh yeah,
so the
genetics.
genetics,
Yes.
his
Hmm.
mother was a Olympic Swedish athlete. His father was a
Hmm.
world-class pole vaulter. So he has
Hmm.
all of the athletic genetics that he needed to be. And his family had him in the pole vault pit in the backyard. So he was vaulting from like age 6 up. So,
Hmm.
he definitely had the experience and the number of repetitions. But, how many kids have that luxury of having a vault pit in the backyard? Not too many there. So, yeah, no, he's exciting. And from everything I can see, a nice guy, and parents are
Hmm.
nice. So, he's got a really good support system. Of course, now we'll see, and this is what's interesting too in dealing with older athletes. Now that they're getting engaged and married,
Hmm.
does that change? Because we had 3 of our elite men get engaged after the Olympics. Mondo was one, Noah
Hmm.
Lyles one, and
Hmm.
Ryan Krauser, the shot putter.
Uh-huh.
So now they've all been with their significant other for quite a while.
Hmm.
So maybe that dynamic won't change at all, or maybe now does a piece of paper make a difference in your relationship and expectations and so forth. So hopefully not, because they're performing quite well without the ring on the finger.
Right. Well, I think about Ryan, and I think about in my mind he's a Midwesterner, but I'm not sure if that's true. Is he from somewhere in the
He's
Midwest?
Oregon.
Okay, so he's from and I don't know. There was a shot putter who was came from dairy farming, and so he'd always like been doing heavy work his
Right,
whole
right.
yeah, you just start lifting a calf and see how long you can lift it until it turns into a
Exactly.
cow, right?
Right, right,
So,
right.
so yes, and the family there was just like so supportive, and his girlfriend who became his wife, they were so integrated in that whole farmland out in the
Hmm.
country kind of thing. So there wasn't a lot of drama.
Well, it might be Christian Cantwell you're talking about,
I
because
think
I think
so.
he was a few years ago, but
Yes.
and again he married one of our elite female shot putters,
Hmm.
who definitely you wouldn't look at her and think she was, quote, the stereotypical shot putter. Their
Hmm.
son is like a giant and is one of the top football player, track thrower guys coming up through the high school ranks right now. So
Hmm.
that's going to be fun to see where he goes, because he's like 6'7", 6'8", and solid. I mean, he's unbelievable. But then the dad was big and solid. So, but like you say, they come from this Midwestern, just hard work background,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
kind of low key, and that's the thing too in athletics, is to sometimes the event or the sport that you're in, you have a personality that kind of fits that, like the
Hmm.
stereotypical, the sprinters are loud and kind of cocky, and that's normal
Hmm.
expectation. The distance runners are quieter, and yet
Hmm.
that doesn't fit for everybody. Throwers are
Right.
loud. Those are just stereotypes. But
Hmm.
there is a nice group of elite level athletes right now that are definitely good role models for our youngsters coming up, if they'll pay attention to it and
Yes.
watch.
Now, I want to get back to our original topic and ask you a question about, we've talked about 80% preparation, affects our performance. How do you see that preparation translating into, say, the business world?
I think when you go into a business presentation
Hmm.
or meeting or prepare a brief of some sort,
Hmm.
that's like you're going to a meet. That's like
Yes.
you're going to training, or
Hmm.
it's your preparation. It might be in the boardroom instead of on a track, but it's
Hmm.
still that same kind of presentation. Before I go out to speak, I do the visualization and the
Hmm.
confidence and the talking,
Hmm.
self talk and things like that. So it transfers right over. And that's why I
Hmm.
don't want people to think that this mental training is just for sports. It's
Right.
not. I mean,
Hmm.
it can be in business. It can be you're applying for a job. You can visualize your answers, or practice with somebody to give them interview questions back and forth, because you have to be able to think on your feet. You
Hmm.
have to get the experience, and a lot of times that you can't study for that. You just have to practice. You just have to do it. You
Hmm.
just have to, be in those situations and to create those scenarios, so that when it really happens, you're like, oh yeah, I've been here before. And like we were saying
Yes.
earlier, the brain doesn't really know the difference. So
Hmm.
it's like, oh, okay, well, you talked about that last week, so
Hmm.
talk about it again, and
Hmm.
so the visualization that transfers to the business world. Just the self-confidence, motivation, goal setting, all of this.
Hmm.
It's not specific to athletics, not even
Right.
close.
And a lot of the founders and the CEOs that I speak to have had some significant failures in their life.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
both financially, emotionally, marriages, relationship with children, etc.
Hmm.
And they have been able to overcome it and come back again even
Right.
better than they were before. And sometimes preparing for failure is also preparing for success.
Oh, definitely. I think in many cases you learn more from failure than you do from success. Now, I'm not
Mhm.
saying that you want to always fail, but
Mhm.
it's unrealistic to think you're going to win everything. And if
Mhm.
you have been winning everything, beware, because it's going to happen. It's going to hit sooner or later where something then stumbles on your way. But
Mhm.
I've heard a lot of athletes say, I've learned more from losing than from winning every race or every event.
Mhm.
And so that's a pretty common thing. Now, of course, when you get into that situation where you go into a meeting thinking that you're going to get the job or get the project approved, and it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
then that's where your coaching or your mental training comes in as to how you rebound from that. Do you
Yeah.
reflect back
Yeah.
right away? Do you
Mm-hmm.
do a tear down right away as to what went wrong? Do
Mm-hmm.
you wait 24 hours and, poor me for 24 hours and then talk about
Mm-hmm.
it? Again, everybody has a little different scenario, the same way with an athlete. After they
Right.
have a bad race, some athletes you can talk to right away. Some of them you stay away from right away because they're so
Mm-hmm.
upset. And usually they're
Mm-hmm.
upset at themselves. They're not
Yes.
so upset at
They're
you.
mad at themselves. Yeah.
And so you
Yeah.
have to kind of back off and respect their wishes. But then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you don't. I mean, I remember a situation where one of my athletes had equaled her PR, meaning her record. She had equaled the best jump she'd ever had.
Mm-hmm.
But because she got third, she was mad. And I'm like, well, the other two just, broke their records.
Mm-hmm.
So you all three were elite performers. The other two made the Olympic standards. So it wasn't like you were in a terrible level competition, but
Mm-hmm.
she was just fit to be tied because she finished third and was upset, went to the car, locked herself in the car. I'm like, please let me in the car. And
Mm-hmm.
we had to do a talk down type of thing there
Mm-hmm.
for 30, 40 minutes for her to realize that, hey, maybe it isn't so bad. Maybe the sun will get up tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And within 3 or 4 days, she came back and PR'd and set a new record for herself and qualified for the Olympic team. So,
Yay.
you just never know. And that's the thing as
Mm-hmm.
to she went from the bottom basement to the top floor within a week.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yet, if you'd
Yes.
followed her emotionally, it wouldn't have looked
Mm-hmm.
that way at all.
And also too, back to business, like with the business, we're not expending ourselves physiologically, but we are emotionally.
Oh, yeah.
and 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 just have something set up in your head, like what's plan B? What's
Mm-hmm.
plan B if, say, they don't buy this proposal? um,
Right.
what can I do next to further my relationship with these people? Because it's the relationship that's the bottom line,
Yes,
especially in,
exactly.
you can say whether it's business coaching or whatever, it is the relationship. And more now,
Mm-hmm.
with all the technology that we have around us, it's the connection, it's the
Yes.
relationship, it's the authenticity you have with another human being that really propels you into whatever your dedicated vision mission is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's it, is to always have, you don't want to assume things are going to go bad, but you want to be ready if and when they
Mm-hmm.
do,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to rebound pretty quickly with that. So, like you say, in the business world, to have, okay, you didn't like this plan, being able, and that's where I say, be able to think on your feet. How about this? Or how can we
Mm-hmm.
adapt this plan to what you'd like? Or, and to find out ahead of time, that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
your homework pre-meeting, is to
Yes.
find out what that customer wants. What is the customer looking for? The client, what
Mm-hmm.
are they looking for? And, I heard a thing where it's part of your job as a coach to help the client see what they need versus what they want. Because
Mm.
they might come in wanting a certain thing, but you, as the quote expert, know that they need to come at it a little different way. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's part of your job now, to show them what they really do need, or to encourage them to kind of look at it a little differently, because their wants might not be what's going to be in the best interest of their job or of their promotion or whatever it might be.
Because there's lots of shiny objects flying around all over the place.
Definitely. Definitely.
And when people think that a shiny object is going to save a program that's not built right in the first place, it's not going to happen.
No, foundation
Yeah.
is so critical, and having a
Yes.
good, it's building a house. I mean, it's a simple analogy is to when you build a house, you don't start with the walls. You start with the foundation, with the floor, and then you build upon it and build the shiny objects up. But no, you've got to have that good base, whether it be in training or business or, again, whatever it might be, whatever field it fits that way.
Yes, because now people think technology is the answer. No, it's part of the whole journey. But if you're selling, whether you're doing business to business, business to person, whatever it is, it's like knowing what that customer needs, wants, will fix that situation or whatever, and you have the solution for it. Somebody just said the other day, it was like so simplistic, and it's so true. The way you're successful in business is like someone has a problem and you have the solution. It's only two things.
Yeah, that's all it is. I mean, that's the thing. And that's the part of where you've got to find out what their problem is, or they have to find out what their real problem is. And sometimes it's not what they perceive it to be. And that's where you've got to keep digging and digging to come to the realization. But they ultimately have to, admit what is needed.
Yeah, and that happens too with your young athletes when they think, oh, if I only do this, then this will happen. But no, underneath that, I call it peeling the onion.
Yes.
You can look down, you can see core stuff in there. Let's take this other layer off and see what happens.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that's your job. You're helping them peel that onion to get down to the essence and be the best possible thing they can be. And they know it. They know that. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Sue, this has been so delightful to talk to you. I have a feeling that you're normally an introvert. Is that true?
Kind of, yes. Okay. Yes.
Me too. I've learned to be a programmed extrovert, but when I need to recharge my batteries, I stay away from people.
Yeah, I sometimes that happens.
Yes, and we love them and we want to be with them and help them, but when it's time to recharge, we'd like a little peace and quiet. Yes, just me and the chickens, or me and the doggies, and those kind of things.
Yeah, being around teenagers all the time, it gets a bit emotional.
Yeah, so my last question is, how do you recharge? What's your recharging secret?
Oh, I wish I had a good one. Mine is actually reading and or studying how to be a better coach. It's perpetual learning. I'm involved in taking a class right now, in fact, that will help me in sprints and hurdles. Not necessarily something I coach every day, but the sprinting world will affect the jump world. And so that helps. So it's all based around sports, and it's just a different aspect of it. I'm exercising for the first time on a regular basis, so that part is good. It's one of those things where, like you said, emotionally, I come home from a 2 or 3 hour practice, and people are like, "Well, you're right there. Why don't you run or train or whatever?" And I'm like, it is so emotionally draining by the end of practice, or beginning, you had to set it all up. So, it's hard to do all of that. So I would not suggest that I am the best balanced person for how to relax, but the reading and playing with animals and things like that is definitely relaxing to me.
Yes. And I tell people who are saying like, I can't wait till I retire. I said, retire? What do you think that looks like?
Don't say
retiring. No, that, like if you think sitting in a recliner watching TV is going to like help you live longer and happier. No. Lifelong learning is the key.
Right.
Never stop learning.
Yeah. No, that's where, like I say, I'm taking classes, I'm teaching classes through USA Track and Field, or I have my own, not a company, but my own little project, Gold Medal Coaches. And so I interview coaches and put together virtual learning summits. And
Mhm.
so I'm either teaching or learning, and then that learning translates into the teaching, speaking at various clinics.
Mhm.
So it's one thing after another. But no, if you retire, don't just think you're going to sit back and watch ESPN, because it doesn't help. Not at all. Got to have a
No,
plan.
definitely not.
Got to have a plan.
Got to have a plan.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, all you guys out there who have listened to this wonderful podcast and heard all the wisdom that Sue has told us about and all the experiences that she's been part of, when you listen to this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you click that follow button or that subscribe button so that you can keep getting more of this kind of quality. And when you look at the show notes, it'll be part of Sue's bio, which is very extensive, as well as some of her programs that she has, and maybe even a way to contact her for a speaking engagement that you might need her to come shore up maybe your program somewhere. And so please, do those things. And Sue, thank you so much. I'm so happy to have gotten to know you better. And we cross paths in many different levels in many different ways. And thank you so much for being on my podcast today.
Well, I
And
enjoyed it.
yes, yes, and I can't wait to get this produced so people can listen to all this stuff, all these wonderful tips and things that you've told us, not only about sports, but life in general, because it
Great.
translates out there into life in general. So
Great.
thank you so much, and maybe who knows, there might be part two.
Yes, I do always have something to say, but thank you for the
Yes, okay.
opportunity. I
You're
really
welcome.
enjoyed it.
Thank you.